for meditation today because I want to focus on being present. What does that mean? We talk about mindful moments. Mindfulness is to be present. So we're going to meditate in the silence for a few moments. We're going to just hold this sacred space that we create when we go within ourselves, within our own consciousness, within our own soul. It's what we do to still our bodies, quiet our thoughts through our mind for just a few moments. And so if you're not used to practicing meditation, just sit. Just to sit for a few moments. We don't usually take time to even do that. So I invite you to begin to still your body. Let your feet rest comfortably on the floor. Get in a position where that you can stay in for a couple moments. And put your hands on your thighs. Let your hands rest on your thighs just to be still. And then if you're ready and if you're comfortable, you can close your eyes. Part of meditation is to focus on the breath. As we focus on the breath, we let go of all the concerns of our day, of our thoughts, to just be. Again, if this feels uncomfortable, it's a practice. So we keep doing it. It's just a practice. So take a deep breath in and release. And on the next breath, begin to focus on relaxing your face, your jaw, your shoulders. Inhale and exhale deeply and just settle in. Feel the body immediately become still and calm and at peace. Another deep breath in and then exhale. And as you do, begin to still your mind. Let the thoughts drift by like balloons drifting through the sky. Hot air balloons just drifting by. We're not trying to stop the thoughts. We're not trying to control them. We're just sitting here letting them drift by. If we get attached to a thought, we return to the breath. Inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. So this morning, as the bell is rung through this meditation, every time you hear that sound, let it remind you to be in the present moment, to be here right now. To be here right now. It's all too easy to let go and not remember that we live in the present moment. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. Today is a gift. That's why we, they, everyone calls it the present. So if you hear the bell ring again through the meditation, through the stillness, let it be an intention, a focus to return to your breath, return to the focus of the present moment. And breathe. Continue to breathe. Take a deep breath in and fully release it. And in these present moments, remember that we live in these present moments. We all too often think that as we begin to prepare for a journey like vacation or time with family, we're all in the moment of trying to do that, get ready for that, and thinking of things that might get left undone. And then as soon as we get to our destination, we think of all the things we left at home that we left undone. So just be present and enjoy this present moment. Experience the awe and wonder of the universe that comes to us. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. But today is a gift. That's why they call it the present. So now one more deep breath. And as you do, you can begin to wiggle your fingers and toes, roll your shoulders, move your body to be fully present right now, right here, as we continue. It's great to see everybody again. You know, I've heard Eddie Watkins, that song that brings all of us get fired up when we hear that. I've been in his presence concerts that he's done a couple of times at some of the conventions. Matter of fact, he was at the annual convention in June, and he had a booth outside, and I talked to him quite a bit. He's so down to earth and so comfortable, and just a great man. And you know, his history, you ought to Google him and find out who he's played with and the session. He's an incredible, and he is the music director at Unity of Orlando now. So he's part of us, if you will, part of the family. So he's a great guy and brings a great message to stir our souls. It's part of the joy of this morning. Not sure what's going to happen because I was running a few minutes late. I called Melissa on the way here. She was running a few minutes late. I called Chris, and she hadn't even left the house yet. Of course, she only lives 2 minutes from here. So you know, that's the joy of what we do. That's joy. Not panic. It wasn't no panic. I just started smiling about it. So no telling what's going to happen for the rest of the morning. So in her research, Brene Brown said that she was surprised to learn how some of emotions were hooked together, connected together. And that's what we're learning through all this. Remember, we talked about early on about love and belonging go together because we must always practice self-love to have a true sense of belonging. This leads to an authentic self, our true self, because otherwise trying to fit in is too easy. We change who we are rather than be our authentic self if we try to fit in. So most of us here, and I see that this is a little statement that doesn't fit this morning. We got quite a few visitors. We're from the same demographics. We've experienced life. We have a lot of life experiences. And so we're living as something other than we are, than our true self. It's tiring. It's tiring to live that way. So most of us know that. So why is this so difficult, living to practice self-love? I was talking earlier before the service that we follow the teachings of Jesus, which is love God, love ourselves, and love each other. It's because many of us, and this is expressed all throughout Brene Brown's book, have deep trauma around shame and guilt. Either from our past, we have a lot of shame and guilt. There's so many tapes and messages in our heads that tell us we're not good enough. And even if we cross this bridge and make some recovery from that, and it is a recovery, I think, anything can trigger those old tapes and shame that we're not good enough. And we know we are. You're good enough as you are right now, right here. These tapes and messages come from schools, churches, religions. It comes from our parents, our relatives, our family, our school teachers. It's how we're taught to see the world. These tapes and messages become our paradigms of seeing the world. So one of the things I follow closely, and I know several of you do too, we talk about it occasionally, is looking at the institution of religion, particularly in the U.S. There's so much changing in the world of church and theology. It's almost every week you hear of an evangelical, a fundamentalist evangelical preacher who's had enough. He's had enough with continuing this is their words, not mine, continuing the lies that have been perpetuated throughout the church, and particularly in the U.S. Have you heard about the meeting of the Synod of the Bishops of the Roman Catholic Church coming up? It's a 3-week conference we're having. Many are calling it inside the church. It's calling the future of the Catholic Church. Now, in unity, we have a lot. There's plenty of recovering Catholics, as you refer to yourself, and so these topics. Listen to these topics. We open our service about being inclusive, and we practice that. But listen to these topics that they're bringing up at this synod of bishops. They're trying to determine whether the priesthood should be allowed to get married. They're looking at whether divorced and remarried people can take communion. And then they're looking at whether women should be permitted to be deacons in the Catholic Church. And then the other one that stirred up a lot of the interest is having the priest bless LGBTQ marriages or gay marriages. But then the subtitle to that, when I was reading that, said it's not to imply that the LGBT or the gay marriage is the same as a heterosexual marriage. There's a difference. It's not. But it's at least it's a start. So Pope Francis is starting all this in the church so that the church should include everyone. Everyone. He said it 4 times in his talk. He said it in Latin. Everyone should be included. Everyone should be included. He means into the Catholic Church. Amazing. It's an amazing time. Even if we look at all the polarization we see in the world, in our own community and all that, but this is huge. So it's the future. It may be a definition of the future of the Catholic Church. So when asked, the reporter asked that I was watching this, and when asked about the concept of blessing a gay marriage, a Manhattan priest in New York said he shouldn't do it. He shouldn't ask us to do that. Well, the reporter asked why, and the bishop, the bishop in New York, the priest bishop from New York said it goes against Catholic teachings. It goes against Catholic teachings. So the church is going to change. There will be change. I don't know what it'll be, but it will change. And see, in unity, we've learned all these differences about what religion really is. I like the definition. I think this came from Richard Rohr or Brian McLaren, part of the Center for Action and Contemplation. Religion is not to teach us what to see, but how to see. So maybe the predominant of the Christian Church and the Roman Catholic Church particularly will learn how to see that we need to be inclusive. It needs to be an inclusive process. So in unity, we learn the importance of gratitude. We've all heard the phrase, attitude of gratitude. Well, I've said that, I don't know how many times I've said it, because when we come into a 12-step, that's what we practice. That is the practice of gratitude, attitude of gratitude. And yet it has to go further than that. As Rose read in the little intro, it's got to be more than that. Gratitude, an attitude of gratitude is not enough. There has to be a practice. For example, I don't have them all now because I lost some of it in the hurricane. I lost some of my clubs and my golf bag and all that. But I have an attitude of playing golf. I love it. I mean, through the years, I've loved to play golf. So I have an attitude of playing golf. But that doesn't mean jack. Doesn't mean jack because I don't practice it. I don't practice it. So having all the paraphernalia and looking good, looking good in my like Jack Nicklaus or the shirts I've got, it doesn't do any good. And having the best golf shoes doesn't do any good because I don't practice it. Gratitude is the same way. The attitude is a thought. Having an attitude is a thought. Practicing it changes who we are. So unless I go to the driving range and spend time on the putting green, having the attitude does nothing. That is exactly what's talked about in our third and fifth principle. The attitude of gratitude is the thought about gratitude. And yes, that's an important thing. But unless we practice it in the fifth principle, nothing happens. It's the same way with gratitude. An attitude of gratitude is a great thing to have. And it's maybe where we need to be at the time, but we have to practice it. We have to develop a practice of gratitude. That's one of the things we do in meditation. Practicing, it's one of the ways we develop that practice, that exercise that muscle. So this leads us, once we talk about gratitude, and as Brene Brown points out, this leads us to the discussion of happiness and joy. And I noticed Rose was a little surprised when happiness and joy, there's a difference. Have you ever thought of that? I hadn't, quite honestly, until I was reading this and then started doing some other research about it. I didn't really think about it. We don't really think that happiness and joy are different experiences. She says in the book, joy is sudden, unexperienced, short-lasting, and highly intensive. It's characterized by connection with others, God, nature, or the universe. Joy expands our thinking and attention, filling us with a sense of freedom and abandonment. So one of the things this morning, I mentioned this morning being unique. It seemed like for some reason, so one of the programs on TV that I just love is the CBS morning, the Sunday morning on TV. I've watched that for 40 years now, I guess, almost every Sunday morning. I would go to, when I was in Nashville, would go to a different church service so that I could stay home and at least get the first part of Sunday morning. If you haven't watched it, I can't recommend it enough. It's not your typical news program to me, anyway. So this morning I was getting ready, and that wasn't the reason I was late this morning. That was another thing. So it was early, and so I was watching it, and this the spot was about American Exchange Project. I don't know if anybody watched it this morning. I knew I'd start crying about it. I could not quit crying. The joy was overwhelming about what this is. American Exchange Project is where high school students take a week to go out and go to a different community than where they're from. For example, there was kids, teenagers. It's a week after they graduate from high school. This was not in my talk. I had to add it this morning. That may be why I was a little late. I started to just throw everything away and let's just talk about that. It is so refreshing in this time of polarization to see something that may have some hope. It looks like it has hope. And it started by David McCullough III. David McCullough, the noted author who's written all kinds of books. It's his grandson, and he said he was tired of living an extraordinary, affluent, blessed life. And so he started this with offering. He does this for free. These kids can swap places for a week. And when they swap places, somebody in California at Berkeley would go to the middle of Kansas, like Dodge City. So here you got a blue group, very blue, very liberal, going to live with kids their own age in Dodge City, where they showed a picture, nothing but cattle yards in Dodge cities. Why would you want to live there? Why would somebody from Berkeley want to live there? These kids, it was this profound experience, and it's a way we're going to change we're going to change these issues that we've probably given up on us, our age group, but the kids can do this differently. So he said something that just really stuck with me. And so you can watch this. They record it. You can go watch that. Just go to CBS News and go to Sunday morning, and watch this show, and see if you sense the same amount of joy that I did. Just lesson after lesson after lesson, what these kids learned, and they were crying too. So that didn't help. Hell for me crying. So David McCullough said, "I love my country. I love what it stands for. So when it's in trouble, why wouldn't we all wish to run to the fire to help put it out, to help save it with everything we've got?" So his goal is, by the end of this decade, is to have 1 million high school students go on this project. That will change the world. That will change us. So again, that was a surprise this morning, a wonderful surprise, a joyful surprise for me. So happiness, the difference between joy and is stable, longer lasting, and usually a result of effort. See, I felt this overwhelming sense, and I didn't have to do anything. I was just sitting there and felt this joy. Happiness is stable, long lasting, and usually the result of effort. It's lower in intensity than joy and more self-focused. With happiness, we feel a sense of being in control. Unlike joy, which is more internal, happiness seems to be more external and circumstantial. So that's the difference. Now, Brene Brown, she reminded me of being an engineer, because she says one of the things that she's not happy about is that the researchers can't agree on what happiness really is. It can't be defined. So I said, oh my, that's just, I mean, there's several engineering problems that I've got that way. I just can't understand why we can't figure these out. So from the people that she interviewed as a result of this, and there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, gratitude practice includes keeping a gratitude journal. By the way, I spent too much money on them, but 3 different gratitude books just recently that kind of go together. To start that again, but continue it with some new books. It's every Thursday when we do meditation, it's a check-in. We always do a check-in. Well, this is a page-long check-in every day. You do a check-in every day. It's so important to do that. So, but creating art, I thought of Melissa's class, creating gratitude art. That's what Melissa's. And even stopping during a stressful day and having a mindful moment for gratitude. The sun on your face, the wind in your face, the Gulf when we look at the Gulf, the gratitude for our spouse or whoever, the loved ones in our lives, and my great-grandchildren. It's having gratitude, practicing gratitude, for taking a moment. When I say you, I mean this community. Without practice, gratitude is like faith without works. It's not alive. It's dead. You know that famous faith without works is dead. That's from James in the Bible. So again, an excellent example of our 3rd and 5th principles. Joy and happiness are different experiences. I'll always remember that now, and I understand. Being joyful and grateful doesn't mean that I'm happy all the time. Happiness is tied to circumstances. Joy is tied to my spirit, and gratitude is tied to joy and gratitude. Joy is an intense feeling of deep spiritual connection, pleasure, and appreciation. There's 2 Greek words that joy and both happiness come from. Malcharios is the Greek word for happiness, and that's the origin of it. Freedom from the rich, from the normal cares of worries of what we typically have is happiness. And then they described Haro, Chairo, is described by the Greeks as the culmination of being, and the good mood of the soul, the good mood of the soul. And the opposite of joy is not sadness, but fear. That's an interesting thought. But we must learn to cultivate these spiritual practices that lead to joyfulness, especially the gratitude. So Brene Brown tells an experience of her first grade daughter she had with her first grade daughter. This was 7 years ago. She was on a paddle boat, her and her first grade daughter. So she's probably 6, you know. They were paddling the boat, and then all of a sudden Brene noticed that her daughter, and she calls her name's Ellen, she calls her Ellie, stopped paddling. And she was just sitting on the boat with her eyes closed. You can just see a little 6th grader feeling the sun and being on the water and letting her mom paddle for a while. And then Brene was a little concerned. She said, "Ellie, are you okay? Is everything okay?" She smiled. Brene said she smiled, looked at her and said, "Mama, I'm fine. I was just making a picture memory." And I'd never heard of that. I never heard that term, picture memory. And Brene says she'd never heard it before. So, and then Ellie said, "Oh, a picture memory is a picture I take in my mind when I'm really, really happy. I close my eyes and take a picture, so when I'm feeling sad or scared or lonely, I can look at my picture memories." I've got grandkids, which you know about, that use those terms a little differently. And then she says Ellie used the word happy to describe what she was experiencing, as we often do, as we often use the term happy. But Brene said there's no question that I witnessed joy, that swirl of deep spiritual connection, pleasure, and appreciation from this 6-year-old. So one of the things this week I got to enjoy was a swirl of emotion and connection, spiritual connection. Go to the next slide, if you would. Huh? Is it in there? Well, it's okay. So this is the slide. I was going to trouble you watching slides of my grandkids. I took a picture of my granddaughter this week. We had all of them this week. Bowen, the little boy, had a ear infection, and Macy, I forget why she was with us one full day. The 3-year-old, she just turned 3. Well, she was laying her chest. I got her to sleep for a nap. Oh, there she is. And she was laying on me, and of course it was joy. There's no question, it was just joyful. I picked her up off the floor. She'd gone to sleep on the floor in a pallet, and I'd helped get her to sleep. So, Brene talked about her little girl and her book, so I figured I could talk about my great-grandchildren. So, but don't we have joy from moments like that? I mean, go to the next one, Diane. And this is all three. This is all three of them. Charlotte Grace, many of you have met. I said, "Let me take your photo, take a picture of Charlotte Grace." Well, she strikes a pose instantly. You see the example there. And then there's the 3 of them in the back seat of the car, just sitting in the car. So it's so much joy. I mean, it's just over and over and over that I have this joy. So what gets in the way of this gratitude and joy and even happiness? What gets in the way? Well, Brene Brown calls it scarcity and fear of the dark. And really, there's one term for what she describes all of that as: foreboding joy. Now, let me describe that for you, and I bet you if I ask for hands, you would all have experience of this. Are you afraid to lean into good news? Wonderful moments of joy. Are you afraid to lead into that? If you find yourself waiting for the other shoe to drop, you're not alone. This is what's called foreboding joy. And most of us experience it. I wonder if that's true. And reflecting and meditating and thinking about this as I was reading her work, thinking whether we in Unity do that. And the answer is yes for me anyway. Practically everyone does it, and 95% of parents do it. We have foreboding. We don't want to embrace the joy and the good, thinking that something's going to happen, some tragedy or something. We start doing the dress rehearsal. I know I've got several people in my family that do that. They are always practicing or doing a dress rehearsal for the drama or the tragedy that's about to happen. But there's a huge cost for this. When we push away joy, we squander the goodness that we need to build resilience and strength and courage. Brene's research found that everyone who showed a deep capacity for joy had one thing in common, one thing with deep joy: practicing gratitude. Practicing gratitude. So in the midst of joy, there's often a quiver or a little shudder of vulnerability. In other words, we have to stay open if we're going to experience this deep joy. We have to stay open. Don't push it down because you're afraid of the foreboding joy. Instead of allowing that quiver to be a warning sign and imagining the worst case scenario, we learn to, and I think in the South, particularly the country thinking, we call it in Chattanooga where I grew up, call it poor mouthing. It was a part of our DNA. You ever heard that term, poor mouthing? That's foreboding joy. We think it's too good, so we have to talk down even the joy. So it's a real country thing to say, but many of you may. Bill, you're from New York. I don't know if you ever heard that, poor mouthing, but it's true. It's what we do to ourselves. So learn to experience the joy and use the quiver, the little quiver that you feel, as a reminder to practice gratitude. So one more story in closing. You recognize these words? And I wish you joy and happiness, but above all this, I wish you love. You know that? Where's that from? Who wrote that? Dolly Parton. Yeah. Dolly Parton. I will always love you. So Brene's got in her book. I don't think this was in. I've got several other of her books. Talks about and I listened to the interview she did with Dolly on her podcast. So she tells the story. Dolly in her book tells the story, and I think it was on her podcast too. When Kevin Costner called her and said he wanted to use that song in a movie, he was producing that movie about using "I Will Always Love You" in the movie. Dolly met with the person who was the music director for the film, and she liked him, and she said yes. But then Dolly writes in her book, she said she never heard back from him, didn't hear anything else about it. And then one day she was driving her Cadillac back home to Brentwood. Now Brentwood is a very, very affluent area where all the country music stars live, right outside of Nashville. I mean, it's 10 miles outside of Nashville. She said she had her radio on, and suddenly she heard somebody speaking just like I did, and I wish you joy and happiness, but above all this, I wish you love. She heard it, and she said, I can't quite place that. I know what that is, but she couldn't place it. It caught her ear, but she didn't recognize it. Then it went into the music, and she almost had a wreck because it's the first time she had heard it on the radio from somebody recorded besides her. And so she had to pull over, and she had such an overwhelming feeling. She pulled over, and it kept, because the words and the music kept getting bigger and bigger and better. And she said, I've never had a greater experience, even from then in my life, hearing Whitney Houston sing that song for the first time. And you know how powerful it is. There's not a better wish that we can do and give to someone we love and care about than wishing joy, happiness, and love to somebody we care about. Dolly even knew this in 1973, that joy and happiness are two separate emotions. She knew it when she wrote the song in 1973. So in closing, I know we all want more happiness. But first, I want to live in a place of gratitude and joy. And most of all, I wish you joy, happiness, and love. Namaste.
Okay. Thank you, Rev Ron. We have so much to be grateful for, and so many to be grateful for around us. I want to thank Rev Ron again. Thank you, Rose. And thank you, Diane and Steve back there running the video and the sound for us. Thank you for our visitors today. And thank you to all of you for joining us today as well. It's time to end our service. And with that, we normally get in a huge circle and we'll sing our peace song followed by the prayer for protection. So let's get in our circle.
A huge circle.
Huge.